that cycle of belief, it is absolutely been critical to the kinds of projects that I've taken on, because there is a belief that grows when you have success.
So many people go through life not willing to take risks. They don't fail, but they also don't win. And when you try to win big, you also potentially risk it big and could potentially lose. But in the long game, as long as we're always trying to play the right cards, we're going to win. Welcome to the Cash Flow Bros podcast. My name is Todd.
My name is Jordan.
I'm Rob.
And we have another guest with us, Lindy Wishard.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. So you have a good depth of real estate deals in your background, but we wanted to bring you in to have a conversation about your most recent completed project,
Okay.
the Fitzgerald.
Sure.
And so this is a project. I just want you to dive into it. Just talk us, overview kind of what it was, timeline, all that kind of stuff, and we'll start asking questions and talking about the deal. So
The good, bad, and the ugly.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'll back up just a little bit.
Give us a little background of you too, as well. Sorry, I should have said that.
No,
before,
that's fine.
so,
We can
yeah.
talk about the latest project, but I think you have to take that project in context to the last 10 years.
Yeah.
I started in real estate about a decade ago, single family fix and flip. That turned into apartment building renovations, all in the Seattle area. That turned into new construction townhouse development. So I think those first few years were fast and furious, but then as we started doing ground up construction of townhouse product in the last 7 or so years, there have been 60 units over a handful of different developments.
Cool.
Wow.
So one thing I'm really curious on, and I think a lot of people that listen to us would be also, you didn't start on these big multi-million-dollar developments. You started with single-family fix and flip, simple bread and butter, just like a lot of people listening to this show do. All of us in this room have done that. How do you keep advancing over, say, 10 years? How do you keep getting to the next level of challenge and the next kind of level of reward? And what do you credit that to? What's your philosophy on how to do that?
Sure. My very first project was a lipstick cosmetic fix on a condo project. I think there was $20,000 in rehab on it. Just as simple as you can get. And then I think there's a cycle of belief in yourself. You do a simple renovation on a condo, and that turned into, well, okay, I can do that. Now maybe I'll do a single family house that needs a little more work. And that turned into, okay, now I'm going to do a full gut job on a house. And that turned into, now let's add a second story and build out a garage. And those projects then led to, okay, well, now I know how to do a bunch of houses at one time. Let's try an apartment building. Great. Renovation, same process, but a little bit different. Okay, I've done a small apartment building. Now I have a belief and an understanding. I have the tools necessary to do that. So I'm going to take the next step and do a little bigger apartment building.
She's like, and the fourth step will be to build a Capitol building for
Yes,
governor.
baby. Yes. So
I'm not
confidence
sure
is
where
huge.
it's going to lead.
Confidence is big. Being
Yeah.
able to start from something small, because there's a lot of people that don't hop into this game at all because of confidence.
Yeah.
They can watch
Sure.
a million YouTube videos and talk to 400 gurus, but at the end of the day, when they have their money in their pocket to start doing something, they get scared. I mean, we see it all the time, analysis paralysis and all these other things that we call it. Confidence is a big part of it.
I am the queen of analysis paralysis.
Okay, you and Todd can get along. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, really. While that cycle of belief, it is absolutely been critical to the kinds of projects that I've taken on. Every project has been a little bit bigger and a little more complicated. Because there is a belief that grows when you have success and you've completed a townhouse project. Now we're going to build a townhouse with subterranean parking. Okay,
Yeah.
it's still wood stick construction, but now we're adding fire suppression. Great. Okay, now let's move into steel buildings. So there is, with experience, comes a belief and understanding. But I have to say, if we're talking about what keeps me up at night, yeah, I am always in analysis paralysis mode. Should I do this? Should I not do this? Have I understood the code enough? Do I understand what's going to happen at this design review meeting? I think everyone has those feelings of doubt and insecurity. And I think it's your circle of influence, the people you have around you, your local real estate group, your friends, your partner, your mentor. Those people help guide you to a level of confidence that, I think I'm making the right decision.
And I think analysis paralysis maybe is not the worst thing because it is needed sometimes. I mean, I jump into things without even questioning, understanding what's going on, quitting jobs, selling houses, moving, having babies all at the same time. But it is good to have a certain level of analysis paralysis.
I think so.
It's very important. It's good to have that healthy balance.
And as the complexity, I'm sure, where you started to where you're now, the complexity of the deals, the deal structure, the building structure, like in the physical and also in the, the structuring of the financing, all that. As it gets more complex, you have to be able to check off more boxes and do more due diligence and
absolutely
really vet it properly. So tell us a little bit. So you started in a single family, kind of every single project seems like you said, hey, I'm going to add something more. I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm going to try something new. I'm going to keep leveling up.
Yep.
So you've leveled up all the way to the most recent project.
That's right.
The Fitzgerald. Let's talk about it.
Fitzgerald. It is a 13-unit luxury condominium building at the top of Queen Anne Hill. So if you're familiar with the Seattle area, or if you're not familiar with the Seattle area, it's the Fraser view of the Puget Sound and the Space Needle.
Nice.
That is this building that I just built.
That's sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So 13 units. Are they 1-1s, 2-1s, 3-2s?
They're almost all 2-bedroom and a den.
Nice.
2-bath, 1 level of subterranean parking, elevator, fire suppression. Top level has 2 penthouse units, outdoor, rooftop deck.
Yeah.
That's
One's
really
your
cool.
place, right?
Yeah. I wish.
No, she's 256 now.
Yeah. That's right.
She's
We'll talk about the
transferred.
move later.
Okay.
But
it's a beautiful. I was just looking at it this morning. It's a really beautiful building.
oh, it's gorgeous.
We definitely need to link something in the
Yeah,
show notes.
there's an agent I think that did a tour of it, and we'll link it in
Okay.
the show notes because
Yeah.
it's beautiful. It's
Monica
gorgeous.
Church did a great
She did a fantastic
YouTube video
job.
tour of it. And there have actually been several people who've done great video tours.
So we'll link that so that people can visually see it. So talk me through, in every deal that I've done, there's always 1 or 2 takeaways that you're like, man, I really killed it on this, or learned to not do this next time.
Sure.
So what are some of the takeaways from this deal? And I know you're
Yeah.
still in it, you're still selling it, all those kinds of things. So you probably are still learning, but
Let's talk about
so
it.
far, yeah.
There are some projects that you do that take you out to deep ocean. And this was the one for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say that, leading up to that project, we had great success in townhome projects, really everything. Everything I build has a very unique style. It's got a design aesthetic.
Yeah.
And what I had heard over and over again from the buyers of our townhouses, people I'd meet at the city level, people I would meet in the community, was that they really wanted single level living in the wonderful neighborhoods of Seattle. And our zoning was such that made it very difficult for builders to build condominiums. But right at the time that the Queen Anne land had become available, some changes had happened in the condominium law that loosened the requirements for condos. And because we kept seeing this demand come up, people who lived in these great neighborhoods, they had single family homes. They'd raised their kids there. And they wanted to be able to downsize into single level living, but stay in their communities.
Right.
And they wanted beautiful buildings. And their only option really at the time was downtown high rise or east side high rise. But this particular buyer, didn't really want to live in a 400 unit downtown high rise. They wanted to stay in their communities. So this opportunity came up to buy a piece of land from a family. And this goes back to, I think, what all of you in this room are so good at, and something that I appreciate, the belief that it is all about the relationships with the seller. It wasn't an open market situation. It was a relationship that took a couple of years to develop with the family who ended up selling these two wonderful pieces of dirt. And it was then, okay, we're in a great romantic neighborhood in Seattle. What are we going to put here that really speaks to the neighborhood? When everybody is building hardy panel boxes that nobody likes. So we spent a long time working on the design and the aesthetics of the building, both interior and exterior. What is the experience of the user? And that's something that experience of the people who are going to occupy this space is something that I think a lot of people don't spend enough time thinking about, particularly in the investment community. I can't tell you the number of real estate seminars I've been to where they're like, paint everything gray. We have one color. All of our product is gray. That makes me crazy.
Yeah.
Spaces have a really unique feeling, and how the light impacts a living room, or how a color of wood floor impacts, how the room and the environment feels. Those things are important. And I think people make buying decisions. You'll get better tenants. You'll sell a product at a higher price.
Yeah.
If you take the time to pay attention to, housing isn't a commodity. Housing is an experience. People buy.
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, when I'm walking some of our investment properties, even on the lower end, I can tell you value based upon the flow of the house. And if you have to, like, I looked at actually a house recently in Fultondale, great location for the price point, Rob sent it to me, and I honestly passed on it because you had to walk to get to the restroom. You had to walk through one of the bedrooms. It's a very small little shotgun house, but I'm like, I was trying to solve it. I was like, and I could solve it, but it costs a lot of money. And I was just like, it just does not make sense. And long term, so the flow of a property and how it feels and all that creates value.
Absolutely. And that's a great testament to your awareness.
You're talking to the right guy about your philosophy on design.
We're in the flow.
Yeah, he's very much in
agreement. Yeah, my background is being a designer. So I'm
That's
always
it's funny because I heard gray and I was like, so agreeable gray is a no-go, was what you're telling me.
See, I agree. I just don't have the eye. So I'm all for staging and picking different colors and materials that are right. I'm just not going to do it. I don't need to be doing it.
But you acknowledge it's a need, and then you hire it out.
Yeah, I do believe in it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that, and it is so beautiful. And the tall windows, my wife loves tall windows, and they bring in so much light. So obviously you kind of took a little bit of a risk. You went out there and you built something that not everybody else was building.
That's right.
And what were some of the challenges with that?
Boy.
You said it took you to the deep end.
It did. So the product is done. It is beautiful. It is being well received by the community. Great. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
The downsides are it was incredibly difficult. Hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
And just for some context, I think this goes in part to the conversation. You guys did that podcast with Greg where he talked about the debrief. In my debrief, I think there's a lot of thought put around, did I give it everything I could? Did I follow it every step of the way?
Yeah.
And I absolutely did. But sometimes things are outside your control. And we bought the dirt 4 months before COVID hit Seattle.
Yeah.
Seattle Department of Construction and Inspection closed down for 9 months.
Just closed down.
Just gone. You still can't get in the door. Everything is now remote.
Wow.
So getting your permit took way longer than it was supposed to. Then we hit, product availability, had interior design package done, windows done, and then suddenly couldn't get windows from the supplier, had to switch to a supplier out of Canada.
Wow.
I mentioned the beautiful windows, and she's just twitching. She's
like,
no, not the window.
It's in the debrief, Todd.
It's in the debrief.
Yeah. Well, those windows are beautiful, but they took way longer to get than initially anticipated.
Yeah,
they
for
cost
sure.
way more than they were supposed to.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting story. We had an entire crew on site. We had done all of our grading, all of our undergrounds were in, all the walls for the parking garage were in. We had a team, there must have been 50 people there, ready to pour the post-tension deck of the parking garage. So it's a concrete slab with a bunch of rebar in it. And from the slab, then you build vertical on top of that. Well, that pour, the pour into the rebar to form the lid of the parking garage is a big deal. It's also very dangerous. Moment because the rebar can snap and fling and hurt somebody, which of course we didn't want to do. So all safety precautions were in place. Third-party inspectors, we had cameras on site. We were going to video the whole thing for documentation. Roll up that morning, ready to go. Everybody's standing there, and we get a call that the concrete's not coming.
Oh,
no.
Lord Jesus.
What do you mean the concrete's not coming?
Gosh.
Concrete strike. What do you mean there's a concrete strike?
Concrete
We
strike.
have a pour. I've paid for it. Like, it's coming. No drivers. The entire city of Seattle, not the highways, not the big downtown builders, nobody could get concrete for 4 months.
4 whole months.
4 months.
That's enough time to get a CDL.
George is thinking, hey, I'll figure out how to drive
I'm
that.
driving that bad boy.
I have to say, I actually
Talk
did
about
look into
red
what it would
tape.
take to get our own
Golly.
drivers.
Goodness gracious.
So, a concrete strike, something you just
Yeah.
you just can't manage that. So I'm on the phone with every builder in town. What are you guys doing? Who are you negotiating with? Who's the labor negotiator? Can we talk to them? It was a mess.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's
It
wild.
was a mess. And then, so the project takes longer than it's supposed to, record inflation, and we get to the end of the project, and now interest rates are through the roof. Project took 5 years, and the world is a very different place 5 years later.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
even 2 years ago, this product would have flown off the shelves. But today it's just different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is the risk that you
Sure.
sometimes take, and particularly, I think, in the speculative for sale development game.
Yeah.
And it's been a really hard thing. I think Rob and I have talked about this a bit, but just that idea of like continued success, continued bigger projects, but sometimes you hit one,
Yeah.
and even though the world can look at it and say, wow, that is one of the most beautiful buildings in Seattle, you can also go, wow, okay, that was 5 years of my life.
That's a tough
And
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was awful.
Yeah. I think it's so good though that, and thank you for being, open and honest about it, because, so many times, even on social media with our friends, we're not willing to say, hey, not every step is a success.
Mm-hmm.
And I would even beg to say that within that success, there are tons of lessons which are taken away.
So many.
which is awesome. That its own win. But in addition to that, when you are willing to risk, so many people go through life not willing to take risks, and they don't fail, but they also don't win. And when you try to win big, you also potentially, are going to risk it big and could potentially lose. But in the long game, as long as we're always trying to play the right cards, we're going to win. Bigger picture, like I have, no doubt you have had more wins than losses in your career as
Sure.
an investor, and for the future probably. But so many times we can say it's all awesome. And that's just not true.
No, it's not true.
I think it's actually, I would almost say, at least in my business, there's always something that is not at all awesome. That's really dragging me down.
Yeah.
Like if I start thinking about it too much,
Yeah.
there's something that's really terrible, like pretty much all the time. You just kind of live with it and eventually it goes away, but then it's replaced by something else that's kind of terrible. And it's part of entrepreneurship.
Yep.
In
I
my
would agree.
experience.
We grow thick. And the perseverance. I mean, I'm just, inspired by the perseverance through it. I mean, that is a lengthy project. I had a project that, don't make fun of me, it pales in comparison to length, but it was a flip that should have taken about 3 months in a part of town, East Lake. And it took a year. And it was delays in the GC issues and delays with labor and underestimating the project and just a slew of different issues. But man, I was so happy to sell that thing. Barely broke even, but I learned so much from it that I don't think I'd change it. I probably would do it better next time. But it's like those lessons that you have to. And I love in the previous. We talked about that debrief. I'm going to start doing that.
That's a great idea.
It's a really good idea. And I'm sure that your debrief will look really good and have a lot of lessons in it. So talk to us a little bit what you're doing now.
Sure.
And you kind of, Rob and I were discussing, you analyze the numbers, you figure out the next steps. You decide to make a move to invest into a new market, and you chose Huntsville.
Yes.
Roll Tide.
Full time. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. She's learning that. She's walking the water.
I'm learning the words.
So talk to us about why you chose that market, what you're doing there now, kind of everything that's rolling in Huntsville, our neighbor to the north.
Yeah. So in the midst of COVID, we had an opportunity to look at cities all over the country and decided that the regulatory environment in the Pacific Northwest is very hard. Landlord-tenant laws in Seattle are rough. Building regulations are tough. 3 to 5 years to get a permit. That makes doing development very challenging.
Yeah.
So we decided to look at other markets, and I looked at comprehensive plans of cities and municipalities all over. And I have to say that what I liked about Huntsville was the amount of inbound migration, the amount of recruitment of really quality employers. The city government is basically run by retired military employees. And it's very common sense. It makes a lot of good sense. And so we liked that idea. It also seemed safe, and the weather was great, and there were just a variety of things about the city that we really liked. So I've been there now for 2 years and am loving it so far.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
That's got to be kind of almost like night and day of like how government is run in Huntsville by retired military. Everything's squared away, I bet. Versus, I would imagine in Seattle, there's a lot of things that don't really make a lot of sense that are just have accrued over the years.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love the breakdown though, because you're not like it's housing prices and supply and that's it. Like even saying there's employment opportunities, but there's quality employment opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Like you really broke down and you kind of deciphered like what kind of industries are moving in to do it. And I agree with you. Huntsville was on my radar. Now I don't have any investments there because at the time I didn't know what I know now as far as finding money and everything. But I was like 6 years ago, I was like, Huntsville's going to be popping.
It is.
And it already is. I think it's going to continue.
There were about 50 different criteria on the spreadsheet of cities that we looked at.
The show notes won't have that. That's top secret.
We will not have that.
That's a top secret criteria. That's amazing.
Yeah.
50 data points.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Wow.
Did you put more, what's the word I'm looking for? More weight, emphasis on certain points than other points, and say like, how did you work through that? Did you number them, or did you just say, hey, these are higher percentage data points for me?
There were a few things, but I think a couple of the big things that I didn't expect to come out that did were very personal. Safety. Like having lived in a downtown metropolitan like Seattle, it had become, not unsafe, but it was a little unsafe.
Yeah.
So, I got very accustomed to never leaving anything in my car, making sure that all the doors were locked all the time. I always had my phone. Somebody always knew where I was. It was just a level of precaution that you take when you live in a big city.
Right.
And I wanted to live someplace where I felt like it was just a safe environment. It was a safe place to be, to have my family. So that ended up being a much higher item in the criteria than I anticipated.
Yeah.
But it has made for a much better quality of life.
That's awesome.
I remember feeling that. I lived in Chicago on the north side for 2 years and then moved back here. And I remember just thinking like, you don't have to have your head on a swivel when you're walking down the street at all. You don't have to, there's just a lot of things that you used to have to think about every day that now you don't, you just hear the birds chirping.
I haven't locked my house in probably like 3 years.
I think it's a lot of people.
Drives my wife crazy. I'm not going to give you my address because you can walk right there.
Yeah. You keep that on the down low.
I think that hypervigilance can create something, some tension that it was important to me to be able to live in a place that didn't have that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, what I love too is we've had lots of discussions is the whole journey of financial freedom, investing in real estate. Like, what's the point? Like, what are we going after? Because it's not to buy another building. It's about, in my opinion, my angle is the lifestyle that I can create for me, my family, for those friends that I have, helping others, and the quality of life, I think that's huge is, when you're choosing to invest in a certain area or a certain place, what kind of quality of life is this going to bring me? Do I need to invest in C-class properties if that's going to bring me anxiety at night? Then just find a different class of property. It doesn't always have to be the spreadsheet completely. Like if you feel comfortable with a certain class of property or property understand, then move in that direction because that's probably the best decision for you. So I love that insight. So thank you so much for taking the time to connect with us. How can people, if they're interested in Huntsville or want to, give you some money for some of your future big, projects or whatever, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. You can check out the Build With Style website, or you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, all the normal stuff.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we'll put that in the show notes and look forward to having you hang out at the meetup tonight. And as always, I always say that time is the most valuable asset we have. And so for you to spend time with us and give us your wisdom it's an honor. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Happy and excited to do it.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Thank you all.